Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum to my dear students. I hope all of my students and people who are watching me, they will be fine. Before starting this lecture, I will request you please watch my previous lectures. If you didn't watch my previous lectures, it will be difficult for you to understand this lecture because previous lectures are relevant to this lecture. In our previous lectures, we have discussed about the functions and some kinds of the functions. Then we had some problems which we have done. Now, in this lecture, we will have some more kinds of the functions which are even functions and odd functions. So, we will determine whether the given function is even functions or odd functions. It's very easy to understand about the even functions and odd functions. If you have any function and just replace the functions by the negative variable. If function does not change, then this function is said to be the even function. If after changing the functions by the negative sign and the function is changed with the negative sign, then this function is said to be the odd function. I explain you by giving some examples of the even functions and odd functions. Let's begin to use this whiteboard for even functions and odd functions. First, I take the example of the even function. For example, we have a function f of x and we replace the x by negative x. This function does not change. In this form, function is said to be even function. I take example of this even function. For example, we have f of x that is equal to x raised to power 6 plus 1. And I am going to replace x by negative x. Here we I write here replacing x by negative x. After replacing x by negative x raised to power 6 plus 1, and we know if the exponent is even integer, then the negative sign is changed in positive sign. It will be positive x raised to power 6 plus 1. Now we have this same function. Function is not changed. In this form, function is said to be even function. Now this is even function. Now we take another example of the odd function. If we replace x by negative sign, f of x, we have function f of x, and we replace x by negative f of x. And outside of this function there is a sign of negative. In this form, this function is said to be odd function. Now we take another example of the odd functions. Let's suppose we have a function that is f of x raised to power 5, and I replace x by negative x. I write here replacing x by negative x. Now we determine whether this function is even function or odd function. We have replaced x by negative x. Now after replacing x by negative x, we know if the exponent is odd integer, then sign does not change. It will be negative f of minus x. Now look at this one. We have this same function which was in our first form. In this form, f of negative x that is equal to negative f of x. In this form, this function is said to be odd function. And if our form is totally changed after replacing the variable with the negative sign, then this function will be neither even nor odd. Now we take some examples and we solve these examples one by one. First, we solve the first part of this question number 9. Now this is the function f of x. I am going to solve this function. This is first one, f of x that is equal to x cube plus x. And now we have to determine whether this function is even function or odd function. We will replace x by negative x. Here replacing x by negative x. Now after replacing x by negative x, we see what happens with this function. Now after replacing x by negative x, we know if exponent is the odd integer, then sign does not change. This will be negative. Positive negative becomes negative. Now we take the common negative, it becomes positive, and also x becomes positive. Now we look at this one. We have the first form of this function, and outside of this function there is a sign of negative. So negative f of x. This function is said to be odd function, as I have told you before solving this example. Now we take a second one example. The second one part is f of x equals to x plus 2 whole square. This is second part of this question, x plus 2 whole square. Now I am going to replace x by negative x, replacing x by negative x. Now we see what happens with this function. After replacing x by negative x, this will not change. 2 minus x whole square. Now look at this one. This is totally changed. We don't have our first form of the given function. In this form, we can say this function is neither even nor odd. Function is neither even nor odd. Now we take third one example of this question. The third one example is f of x, that is equals to x square root x square plus 5. F of x equals to x square root x square plus 5. Again I replace x by negative x. Here I write replacing x by negative x. Now see what happens with this function after replacing x by negative x. So negative x square root. We know exponent is even integer. Sign is changed into positive. So now look at this one. This is the same function, but outside of this function there is a sign of negative. In this form, this function is said to be odd function. Now you can take more examples to know about the given function is even or odd function.